Over my years of working on YouTube videos, I've recently come to a sad realization. I have now watched every episode of everything Seth MacFarlane has ever created. All except one. Now, if there's 3 things you need to know about Seth MacFarlane, it's 1. He's really epic and funny, naturally. 2. He was originally supposed to be on the flight that crashed into the World Trade Center, that's real, look it up. And 3. He loves Star Trek. From as early as the first episode of Family Guy, Seth has been sneaking references into anything he touches. And by sneaking, I of course mean he makes it as apparent as possible that he loves Star Trek.
Oh my god, I hit William Shatner.
Light, growing dimmer, can't breathe. Beam me up, God.
In fact, he loves Star Trek so much that in 2017 he got the chance to create his very own Star Trek-like show, The Orville. Now, I say Star Trek-like, as well the show shares extreme similarities to the Star Trek franchise, from the costumes to the tech design, down to the way the characters speak. You know, for all intents and purposes, this is Seth MacFarlane's take on Star Trek. There's just one issue with that. This thing has absolutely nothing to do with the Star Trek brand. This wasn't a case like with the Flintstones, where Seth was brought on to create a reboot of it for the modern age. No, he just wanted to make Star Trek, just without getting to call it Star Trek. Now, what's interesting is that the Orville is still running to this very day, although seasons have been releasing at a snail's pace. With there being a 3-year-long gap between the 2nd and 3rd season, along with us only recently learning that Season 4 has just been put into production earlier this year, so who knows when that'll release. Well, the show must be just that good, that fans are willing to wait years for each installment. But if you take a look at reception for it, it's confusing, to say the least. The first season was met with truly abysmal reviews, like genuinely horrible. Claiming it's unfocused, with an unclear tone, many criticized how blatant of a Star Trek ripoff it was, as well as Seth himself just not being a very endearing leading man. Damn, seems like folks hated this show. Then you look at Season 2, and it's got a bloody 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. What could have possibly changed in that time to make the series so beloved? Well, that's what I'm gonna find out today. I've tried watching the first episode of The Orville many times since its premiere in 2017, but could never get more than 15 minutes through before switching it off and forgetting about its existence for the next couple years. But that changes right now, as I have finally sat through each and every episode of The Orville. Time to see what all the hype is about.
Holy fuck.
Right from the get-go, I mean, no matter what, you have to acknowledge just how monumental a moment it must have been when Seth got The Orville greenlit. It's like if I finally got my own cartoon show produced, The Mildly Weird Cousins, starring Bibi Burner with his 2 magical flying elves, Venus and Spelda. If any TV executives are watching this, please email me at sethmacfarlane321@aol.com. But at the same time, he sure had an uphill battle to face when promoting this. He's Seth MacFarlane, the funny cartoon man. Now he's got to convince people to watch his dramatic space soap opera.
There's some serious space shit right there, let me tell you.
Okay, I want you to imagine the prime Family Guy viewer. How most Family Guy fans probably look. You probably think of something like this. Or this. Or even this. Family Guy is very fast-paced, juvenile, and heavily reliant on poking fun at pop culture. Whereas The Orville is much slower-paced and dramatic, with only light comedy sprinkled throughout. Not that there's no crossover in those two audiences at all, but when you hear Seth MacFarlane Project, you probably think of something in line with Ted, or hell, even the new Naked Gun, which was great. Yeah, no, let's try to get that same audience to sit down in the evening and watch this.
You know it.
The main thing it did have going for it was the fact that there was no new Star Trek show airing at the time, to leave a gap in the market and hopefully draw in fans of Star Trek to The Orville. Oh wait, a new Star Trek show premiered just a couple months before The Orville? Yikes. I mean, he even copies the title scheme, there's no attempt at subtlety here. So, why not just take a look at episode 1, Old Wounds? So the general plot synopsis of The Orville sees our main character, Ed, or as I'll be calling him for the duration of this video, Seth MacFarlane, coming home from work one day only to find his wife sleeping with a blue alien. Cut to 1 year later! Great, we sure learned a lot about this character in the opening scene. The divorce with his wife has caused Seth to suffer at work, with him finally catching his big break when he's offered to command the exploratory spaceship, the Orville. Also, sorry, but small tangent. Can we talk about how stupid of a name the Orville is for your show? Star Trek. They're trekking across the galaxy. Simple, to the point, audience immediately gets what the show is about.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
Seth apparently called it the Orville after Orville Wright, the American pioneer who established modern aviation along with his brother. Yeah, this guy's gonna get that. Anyways, with this, Seth meets his crew. He enlists his friend Steve Smith to be pilot. Along with him, we meet Dr. Claire, Robot Isaac, Chief of Security Alara, Navigator John Lamar, Totally Not Worf Commander Bortis, along with First Officer, his ex-wife! Oh no! It's like a cheesy mid-2000s rom-com. You're telling me my ex-wife is my co-worker? To be fair, this reveal adds a great deal of drama to a first episode that is sorely missing it. But first, I think it's important to establish what the Orville sets out to accomplish as a Star Trek-like show. And to do that, it's naturally important to establish what made Star Trek itself so popular. Now, Star Trek has been around for over 5 decades at this point, and therefore has existed in many forms. You got the original, the animated series, the motion picture, baby show version, Rick and Morty version, and so for the sake of simplicity, I want to focus on one in particular, Star Trek: The Next Generation. While of course not everyone in the fanbase agrees it's generally considered to be the best, or at least most popular Star Trek series, running from 1987 all the way to 94, consisting of 7 seasons and a whopping 178 episodes, along with a series of movies. It's not hard to tell that Seth was easily influenced by this show the most. He's made it very clear over the years. I mean, he went out of his way to have the entire main cast guest star in Family Guy.
But you're a baby.
Yes, that's right, Denise Crosby.
It's a show that was extremely beloved for many reasons, but if I were to try to sum it up, it's that despite on the outside appearing like it would be this epic, grand space adventure filled with action and explosions and crazy, otherworldly planets and aliens, in actuality, it's a soap opera. It was a show that challenged the norms of the time by exploring topics not often talked about, especially not on television, using its sci-fi exterior as the perfect jumping pad to tell stories that delve into the morals and philosophies of other cultures' different ways of life. It did all this while providing thrills, romance, drama, characters with depth and different beliefs. And we see those beliefs challenged by other characters while not painting anyone as necessarily good or bad guys. Every action is motivated and results in a chain reaction based off the other character's own personal morals. And because of that, it creates episodes that are thought-provoking, but more importantly, entertaining. The Orville Season 1 feels it being either. It does a horrible job at bringing you in. The opening of your TV show should ideally give the audience an idea of exactly what they're in for. Something especially necessary for a show that takes place in such an unknown point in time. The Orville needs to quickly catch the audience up to speed with 400 years of human advancement, so they're not too confused with what's going on or how this world works, as well as why we're meant to care about our main character. Unfortunately, the Orville did not think this was necessary. All we really learned from the first couple scenes of the Orville are, it's 2418, Seth finds his wife having an affair, never mind, now it's 2419, then Seth gets command of the Orville. That's the first 3 minutes of this show. We learn nothing about Seth as a character, and when we do, it's merely said, not shown.
But you haven't really inspired anyone with all that much confidence this past year.
I know. I've had some personal stuff that's...
That sure sounds interesting. I wish we could have visually learned how his job suffered because of his personal life. They imply here he was more than capable of manning a ship before the stuff with his wife happened, but we don't know that. We later learn that his wife did what she did as a result of Seth never spending any time away from his job. Okay, so he was like a workaholic? Did we get to see that at all? To at least understand where the wife is coming from? No. So are we gonna see him start to give up on his job throughout the following year? No. It's just, you were good, then you got bad, here's a ship anyway. Now, if this scene were like 10 minutes later in the episode and we spend the first quarter getting to know Seth as a character, perfectly fine. But as the opening, it just leaves no impression whatsoever, because we're just being fed information about a character we don't know, doing actions we've never gotten to see him do. This is how the whole episode goes about getting its info across. We have the big monumental scene where Seth meets his entire crew, except his wife, so we can save that twist for later. But the entire thing is just Seth doing a literal rundown of each of them in a line and listing their species traits. It's all exposition.
You're 23 and you're chief of security on a starship. It says here you're a level 8 helmsman, too. That's pretty impressive. Your entire species is male, isn't it?
That is correct, sir.
Your credentials are exceptional. Molecular surgery, DNA engineering,
I
psychiatry.
don't know any of
Could be
these
posted on a
words
heavy
he's
cruiser. What are you
using.
doing?
And again, I gotta clarify, there would be nothing wrong with this if we also gotta see these traits. We're being fed all this information and all these names when we're not even sure what Seth's personality is yet. Speaking of, Seth is a horrible protagonist. I mean Ed. Seth MacFarlane sounds like he's role-playing this entire season.
Set course for Epsilon and engage quantum drive.
He's more convincing as a talking bear. Throughout the first half of the season, we learn next to nothing about his character. I could not sum him up for you if I tried.
What is that?
That is, Kermit the Frog.
Okay, he's friendly, nice, but again, not really in a way that comes off genuine. He constantly talks to his crew the way a primary school teacher talks to their student who's crying because they miss their mom. For the first half of the season, he just spends his time making awkward small talk with his crew, kind of acknowledging the lack of any real energy between them. And when he's not doing that, he's spending his time whining about his ex-wife being his first officer. Like, who wants to watch 40 minutes of some guy whining? Wait, how long's this video? Again, if we're gonna compare him to Picard, that character just effortlessly earns the respect of everyone on board, making a name for himself throughout Starfleet. Whereas everyone in the Orville kinda selectively takes Seth seriously as a captain. He wants to be a Picard, but comes off more like a Michael Scott type character. Fine for the cringy boss of a failing paper company, but maybe doesn't work as well for the respective leader of a fucking spaceship. He brings the entire show down due to his lack of any sort of presence. You honestly forget he's even there half the time. It's obvious when watching, Seth gave himself the captain role in the Orville without consideration for whether or not his strengths as an actor complemented that sort of role. No different from the exact same issue being present in A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah, we're gonna miss you, Commander.
I'm gonna miss you guys. Believe me, I wouldn't be leaving if it wasn't such a sweet offer.
Why are they speaking to the captain like this? Seth should be slapping this guy across the face. In Season 1 at the very least. Again, this is all in regards to how the show introduces these characters. To be honest, I can't entirely blame them for this. The Next Generation was airing at a time when television series were expected to get 20 plus episodes a season, naturally giving the crew more time to introduce all these characters, giving the viewer a reason to care about them in a story primarily catered to them. Seth has to achieve this in less than half the time, Season 1 having 12 episodes compared to the Next Generation's 26. Because of that, they have to awkwardly cram almost every character into almost every episode, giving each of them something to do so we can actually learn who they are. But as a result of that, it's rare any of these stories get the time to delve into these topics beyond the surface level. And that's not to mention just how many of these ideas are lifted directly from Star Trek, like in Episode 2 where Seth and his ex-wife get kept in a human zoo, or in Episode 3 we see an issue involving one of the crew members get escalated and go to court. I actually find this to be the first decent episode of the show, until Veronica, who's like my Star Trek encyclopedia, immediately pointed me to an episode of The Next Generation Seth was clearly trying to recapture the vibe of, and after sitting down to watch it, it's clear as day just how badly Seth wants to try and be as cool and philosophic as Star Trek, but just fundamentally misunderstands how to capture it. Episode 3 of the Orville, About a Girl. The episode sees Bortus and his husband have a baby girl. But oh wait, that's the one piece of information Seth exposited about this character in the pilot. He comes from an all-male species. Oh no! Apparently this is a rare occurrence with their species, and so when they come across it, they simply have a doctor change their gender so their culture demands. This confuses and upsets Seth upon hearing what they plan to do, that it should be their children's choice what happens to their body, eventually bringing around Bortus, who now has to convince their husband and species as a whole that this isn't the right thing to do. He learns this by watching Rudolph, okay? That's another thing this show does that pisses me off. It's 400 years in the future, yet they reference all this stupid shit from our time. Like, sure, I can accept those old stop-motion films could be remembered in the future. Like, whatever. But then other times they're name-dropping the fucking Hunger Games. Like, bro, that shit is barely relevant now.
Tamim Emadi.
Katniss Everdeen.
Even still, I find it to be the first episode of the show that bordered on recapturing the appeal of Star Trek. There's solid twists that show the character motivations, like Bortus' husband revealing this surgery had been done to them when they were born. And despite us obviously having a clear goal to root for, they don't go out of their way to make the rest of his species cartoonishly evil, wanting to do the operation just cause. They have actual arguments to be made, like the endless torment that will come with being the only female child, claiming this is for the betterment of their kid. Like, even if you don't agree with that, it challenges Seth's preconceived morals at least, you know? even if he doesn't really have any involvement in this. Again, pretty decent episode, but I cannot look at it the same now without thinking about how Star Trek handled this concept infinitely better. TNG's Season 2 Episode 9, The Measure of a Man, similarly leads into a courtroom drama as the android on their crew, Data, is called to be disassembled in the hopes of being able to understand how he works and try replicate him. They promise to back up his memories as files and give them back to him when they're done, but as a result, the emotion, the essence behind those memories, will be forever lost. This creates a great moral quandary. Does Data, the android, have rights? We see them go back and forth on this. If Data has rights, then does that mean the ship has rights? He's property of Starfleet, after all. For a while, it genuinely seems like the opposition has the upper hand, Picard unable to really put into words why Data deserves the same rights as everyone else. This is before a helpful conversation between him and Whoopi Goldberg that's real helps him understand just how to go about his counterargument. Not only does Data exhibit the same classifications the opposition deems makes someone human, but if he does succeed with his plans and is able to replicate thousands of Datas, then doesn't that make them a race? And if you force that race to do your bidding as property, then isn't that just slavery? Bam! Data gets his rights, Picard wins the case, and asks the Lady Admiral out for a meal. Winner, winner, chicken fucking dinner. But even then, beyond the courtroom, everything this episode does to set that up purposefully draws in as much drama as humanly possible. The episode begins with Data playing poker with the rest of the crew, trying to join in and understand their human games, before getting confused at the idea of someone bluffing. The facts are you can't win, so why place your bets? Because it's about more than the facts. It's about the confidence, the emotion. The first scene is a microcosm for the entire rest of the episode. You know, maybe in the Orville, the episode could have began with the crew watching Rudolph with Bortus, which can then be called back to later on to help him change his mind. Instead, it comes off like the crew is manipulating him into changing his mind. But on top of that, Star Trek masterfully weaves other members of the cast in to create as much drama as possible. Picard is forced to represent Data. The responsibility of whether or not he's dismantled is put on his shoulders. The pressure's on. On top of that, Commander Riker, Data's friend, is forced to be the prosecutor because they need a high-ranking officer familiar with the case. And if he refuses to do so, then they won't even hesitate to handing Data over, adding another layer to the drama.
I almost cost you your life. That action injured you and saved me. I will not forget it.
It's so good, it's a perfect piece of television. And it's not that the Orville's take on this is bad, it's just that it's missing the emotion, the essence. And even then, just look at these episodes in comparison. In Star Trek, there's thought behind the way these scenes are shot, the way they're lit. Despite the Orville clearly being much higher budget with their fancy sets and CGI, it's missing the human element that makes Star Trek, Star Trek.
Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits.
The Orville, more like the Snorville. Unfortunately, that is the best the first half of Season 1 has to offer. A decent, but undoubtedly inferior version of a Star Trek episode already perfected decades ago. The rest range from alright to utterly forgettable, aside from noticing a couple of Seth's mainstay acting buddies. Like the love interest from A Million Ways to Die in the West, the kid who plays John from the Ted series, and as well as being the kid who misses in Daddy Daycare. Also, the girl from the Ted series kind of takes you out of it. A show like this can be very boring when you don't like these characters. The most you get are awkward attempts at romance and the occasional funny joke.
Oh! You will be silent!
But, I will say, once you get to that second half of the season, the show does start to find the resemblance of a groove. More like a foot tap. Once they've had their time to introduce all the characters to you, they actually start presenting you with episode concepts that are, dare I say, interesting? Seth and Steve Smith sneak onto a krill ship, who are pretty much just the Cardassians from Star Trek, leading to them killing everyone on board, betraying the friend they made while on the ship. We see John Lamar get cancelled IRL as they land on a planet that runs on Reddit upvotes. Again, not joking. We learn that the Doctor has kids on board as they get stranded on an unknown planet with Isaac the robot, as he learns what it means to be a parent and care for others. One of my favorites of the season involves the Orville requesting the help of the blue guy that Seth's ex-wife had the affair with. Just as Seth and his wife are getting on better terms, she goes and sleeps with the guy again. But Seth just can't stay mad at him because he's such a nice guy. A real nice guy. a really nice guy. We learn that the blue alien guy releases pheromones that makes him irresistible to anyone who touches him, implying that what she did a year ago may not have entirely been within her own control, leaving things open for the two of them to get back together again. Too bad the second episode of this show had them stuck in a human zoo where they realized they hated being together, but ignore that. They're not amusing episodes or anything, but they at the very least border on recapturing the appeal of Star Trek, only really brought on by the characters not being pushed nearly enough. It's also casual. And sadly, I think it's all brought down a tad by a very underwhelming finale, where we see Seth and Kelly begin to rekindle her love before she crash lands on a planet still in its Bronze Age, where Kelly deliberately breaks the Prime Directive, to not interfere with the development of alien culture. But can't you at least understand why? This girl got a very, very tiny scratch on her head. She just had to help. Seth fails to report this infraction, obviously because of his love for Kelly. But things progressively get worse as they see that the planet now worships Kelly as a god. With time moving faster on the planet, it's now 700 years in the future, and we see all the wars and suffering caused by this worship. This whole situation reminds me of an episode of this one show. What was it called? Oh yeah! The Cleveland Show! Star Trek! Season 3, Episode 4 sees them go to a planet still in its Bronze Age, where they accidentally blow their cover in front of a man, causing him to injure himself. Although here he's actually on the brink of death and not just slightly scratched up. Because of this, they beam him up to the Enterprise wearing a D as he catches a glimpse at Picard, seeing him as this glorious, godlike figure. It was like, an accident that he saw him, and not just one of them deliberately going out of their way to interfere. I mean, she literally looks the kid in the eyes and says, "I'm Kelly." With this, they bring him back to his planet where he tells everyone about Picard, in which we actually see Picard act like, the boss. A captain of some sort. He's actually pissed that they broke the Prime Directive.
He'd already seen us. The damage was done. It was either bring him aboard or let him die.
And why didn't you let him die?
I won't go beat by beat throughout both episodes, but I'll give a couple highlights. In the Orville, the conclusion to all this is the crew deciding to send Isaac, who's had next to nothing to do with the plot here, down to the planet to teach them that Kelly isn't a god, in which we see them advance hundreds of years, to the point where they can come up to the Orville and actually speak with Kelly. They inform the crew that Isaac taught them next to nothing. They advanced beyond religion purely by themselves, and that if it wasn't Kelly they were praising, it would have simply been some other made-up god. Did you know Seth MacFarlane's an atheist? I understand the point he's trying to make and how it sounds on paper, but in context to the episode, all they're basically saying is, none of this mattered. You broke the biggest rule, messed with this species' trajectory, further tried to fuck with it by sending a robot down, but who cares? None of that matters because God isn't real. Whereas in The Next Generation, even though he doesn't want to, Picard takes this issue on personally. He takes one of the aliens up to his ship where she gets to see her planet from space, before explaining to her that he's not a god, he's no different from her. He asks how she thinks someone from hundreds of years in the past would react if they had saw her, and how that's exactly what's happening here. He's personable, he is understanding, he breaks things down in a way he hopes she'll understand. Kelly just goes to a priest and shows them how she has this cool device that can heal her wounds. Guess which of these scenes has more emotional weight? Also, one of their crew members are being held hostage on their planet, so there's like a reason and stuff to stick around beyond further tampering. Despite being the exact same story, almost to a shameless degree, the difference comes from the Orville using this as a way to say that religion will always exist in some form, you can't fight it, and eventually civilization will learn to evolve beyond the need for it. While Star Trek uses this to tell a story about desperate people wanting to believe in something. The man who saw Picard merely wanted his dead wife back, and thought that believing in a higher power and doing what he thinks its bidding would put him in a place where this god would help him. What's even worse is how they use this episode as a reason for Kelly to tell Seth they can't be together. She starts going off about how his role as captain means he's putting his rational decision-making second to his love for her, using him not reporting her as an example. I can see what they were going for, and I can see how they thought this would result in a bittersweet finale, but all I could think was, what? Wasn't this all your doing, Kelly? Weren't you the one to break the Prime Directive, not Seth? He gives literally every member of the crew second chances, doesn't report some of the shit they do. In fact, he's treating you the exact same way he does everyone else because he's never been shown to be a strict boss. There is no indication this was him letting his guard down, because it's never fucking up. She uses this example of who he would send on a suicide mission, her or another crewmate, and he says he can't make that decision, which she uses as a big, you would send the other person down because you wouldn't want me to die. which is a completely irrelevant argument, because whether or not you are together, he still loves you, so he wouldn't sand you either way. In fact, the only thing that would solve this issue you are claiming exists is if you were not on the ship, period. I mean, that's the only true way to ensure there's no bias here. But, wait a second. Aren't you, Kelly, the person who requested to be Seth's first command? Kelly? I don't know, this all seems like a big you problem. Kelly! Sour taste in my mouth aside, the Orville Season 1 is rough to say the least. It's not devoid of good ideas or solid episodes, but to get to those you have to get around two main things. That the first half of the season sucks hard, and to get to the decent stuff you have to sludge through 5 hours of mediocrity, and in the time spent watching this you could have been instead watching a much better version of this show. I mean, I mentioned I was working on this Orville video months ago, and that's a result of me taking so long to get through it. Because after every episode or two, I would just go back to watching Star Trek. If there's anything positive I can say, it would be that I finally had an excuse to check out The Next Generation, and you know what? It's great. I love it. But now I gotta stop watching it because the Orville got a second fucking season. Alright, here we go. Time to find an answer to the question that has stumped me for half a decade. Why the fuck does the Orville Season 2 have a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes? First of all, I'm at least happy this season was allowed to have 14 episodes instead of 12. May not sound like a whole lot, but it adds up. Thankfully, this pays off as the episodes this time around are allowed to be a lot more focused on a singular character's plight, whereas Season 1 had a big issue in not being able to have an episode not have every major character shoved in. You do have to get past the season premiere though, which had me immediately concerned as just about every issue from the first had transferred over. Seth has no presence here aside from being extremely desperate after Kelly informs him she's seeing someone. Again, not stopping to realize how stupid Kelly's logic is.
You're trying to tell me you would send the woman you love? Really?
What does it matter? He loves you either way. Why do I care so much? But aside from that riveting drama, we also got Kelly's relationship with her new boyfriend, Alara taking a chance on the weird alien guy who's voiced by Cleveland's voice actor, Bortus preparing for his pee party, Dr. Finn dealing with her kid getting blamed for something he wasn't entirely responsible for at school, as well as John Lamar being Steve Smith's wingman. That is all crammed into the first 45 minutes of the season. You have no idea what the main story here is, and because of that, none of it feels important. It also means a majority of these plot lines end in the most basic of ways. Like Isaac just uses the computer system to confirm Dr. Finn's son's innocence, leading to her falling in love with the robot incapable of feeling human emotions. Seth just gives up and helps the boyfriend get Kelly back, and Steve Smith doesn't even get the chance to talk to the new girl he liked, because now she's getting friendly with Seth. End of the episode. What an uninteresting premiere. Completely let down by the fact that it has to do the hard task of reminding you what these characters' personalities are, because the first season didn't have enough time to explore any of them. Things do very quickly pick up, thankfully, as we see the rest of the season do a brilliant job at following up on and expanding upon plot elements set up in the first. We see Bortus, who for some reason has given more episodes focused on him in this series than anyone else, not even Seth MacFarlane. He gets addicted to simulator. Now he's gotta go to counseling with his husband to confront why he no longer desires being intimate with him, where we find out it's due to his resentments for the sex change operation their kid was forced to go through in the first season.
Captain, we have another problem.
Oh, neat. What is it?
You're the captain! Don't speak to your crew like this! It's got a bit of an anticlimactic conclusion where Bortus simply learns to appreciate the time he can spend with his husband, but I still appreciate the effort, and things only pick up from there, as the follow-up episode has us go to visit Alara's homeworld as she finds herself weakening, where we meet her parents and see just how judgmental they are of her, comparing her non-stop to the success of her sister. It's one of the most interpersonal episodes of the show, only made all the more impactful once it ends with her deciding that she wants to stay, not returning to the Orville and being written out of the show. I think this was a result of the actress not wishing to return, but hey, they made a great episode out of it, so who cares? I like how it ends with a callback to the first lame dad joke Seth made towards her, and it even has Patrick Warburton, so you know it's gonna be good.
What is that?
Kermit the Frog?
Sick.
Easily, though, the first time the show truly surprised me, however, came from the very next episode, where we see that Seth and this new girl have actually started dating, before she reveals this was all a trick. That this entire time, she was actually the same Krill woman from Season 1 in disguise. I can only imagine how much more of a shock this would have been if we actually saw their relationship grow at all. Even after finding out her true identity, Seth still questions if any of their interactions had been genuine, even a little bit, which would be a little easier to buy and sympathize for if we saw those interactions at all. They also still try to pull that Seth is a workaholic shtick, which makes no sense.
Fight this. Your work remains your first priority. You have no balance.
My God, you sound like my ex-wife.
Like, what are you on about? This episode starts with Seth taking off work early to spend time with you. All these faults of his are only ever said, not shown. Still though, it's a great episode, especially once another alien race attacks, leaving the two of them stranded on an island together, where we see that there was indeed some kind of affection for Seth on her part. It's nice to get moments in this show where the characters are allowed to just talk. There's an actual connection that we can see growing. This is also a crucial aspect of my favorite storyline this season, that being the unlikely romance that sparks between Dr. Finn and Isaac. At first it comes off completely asinine on her part, since she's more than aware that Isaac's species is unable to feel anything. You know, I was getting real her vibes from a majority of this. I was honestly expecting it to end with her realizing how deranged this all comes off. But instead, they went for the opposite approach, which wasn't nearly as forced as I was expecting it to be. With Isaac wanting to learn more about human relationships, he erases his files on her so he can properly get to know her, uses the simulator room to appear human, even leads to them having weird simulator sex. And right when everything seems to be looking up, he immediately wants to break up with her, feeling he had learned all he needed. They of course have to end things on a happy note, with Isaac realizing that she's woven herself into his sub-programs, and that he's better off with her than without. It's a great episode and only followed up by more and more. I think what I love about this season so much is that there's actual consequence for characters' actions. Like they bring a new security girl in to replace Alara, and she's a great introduction where she starts to fall for a Mocklin who is attracted to the opposite gender, but he has to fake his death in order to flee his species. As if they find out, he would be thrown in prison. It's a whodunit mystery with Bortus' husband being blamed for the murder, with a genuinely interesting twist. As well as a really sad ending, where the Mocklin decides he doesn't want to live in hiding like Tala suggests, being sent to prison for life and clearing the name of Bortus' husband. However, when he comes to thank Tala, she tells him to fuck off. That because of what she had to do, this person she cares about has to spend the rest of their life in prison. And that if they cross each other on the ship, to turn the other way. It's one of the rare times where the drama between the characters has actual stakes and sets an uneasy precedent going forward. I love it. Season 2 also contains our first two-parter with the Union sending the Orville to Isaac's planet, in the hopes of having his species, the Kalon, finally join. It's only after arriving that they uncover millions of human remains, finding out that the Kalon weren't ever considering joining the Union, and instead were just wanting to see if the people on Earth were worth keeping alive.
Everybody seemed to have a fun time at the party.
Yeah.
God, he's so awkward. It's an exciting special with some great shots, tries to give the Kalon justification for their actions through the reveal that their species had been enslaved by biologicals, explaining their contempt, and ends in an all-out war where Seth has to enlist the help of the Krill for the greater good. And best yet, it's all grounded through the relationship Isaac had built with Dr. Finn and her two kids. He's unable to reciprocate their sadness after announcing his intent to stay on his home planet, the betrayal felt by them once his true plans were revealed, and the eventual sacrifice he makes in turning against his own kind and helping them, showing that in some way, he does care. All's well that ends well, with Isaac returning to the Orville, however creating a very powerful enemy in the process. It's times like this when you're convinced that the Orville is pretty damn good, even more so with the season finale. It's kind of a two-parter with the penultimate episode seeing a time travel whatever happen. I think that's the official term. Now Kelly from 7 years ago has shown up. Oh no! This is the Kelly from the day after her first date with Seth MacFarlane. Now she's got to come face to face with the fact that they've gotten together, been married, gotten divorced, and are now working together. Seth is incredibly manipulative about this, by the way. He wants to start going out with past Kelly, which obviously upsets present Kelly, and he literally gives her the ultimatum of, well, if you don't fuck me, then I'm gonna fuck you from the past. Like, what? It's a great little character-focused episode where past Kelly becomes unhappy with her future, outright calling her present self a disappointment. And so when she finally gets sent back to her own time and Seth calls her up for that second date, she declines, leaving things open for one of the coolest episodes in the entire series so far. The Road Not Taken shows us a bad timeline, where Seth and Steve Smith are scrounging for food, on the run from the Kalon, just as Kelly and the rest of the Orville crew intercept them. We find out that this is the future that's been created after Kelly denied her second date with Seth. That's right, them getting together and divorcing was apparently like the key to a good future. Either way, it's an extremely exciting finale. We even get to see Alara come back for a quick cameo, as the crew try to undo this bad timeline by finding their ship deep underwater and sending Dr. Finn back in time to erase past Kelly's memories of being sent into the future. It's complex. Again, it's episodes like these where I can't help but think, oh, so these writers do have the ability to lock in. And that's not even the best the season has to offer. Okay, best and worst episode, starting with the worst. Episode 10, Blood Patriots, sucks. It sees negotiations start with the Krill to join the Union. Bad news though, 2 of their longtime prisoners have escaped and fled aboard the Orville. And even worse, one of them is Steve Smith's friend? We got a dilemma on our hands. Do they give up the prisoners to continue negotiations, or keep the prisoners and have the Krill remain enemies at a point when you're already on the brink of war with the Kalon? This one feels because there is a clear option here. There should be no discussion whatsoever, and the logic they try to use just feels on every level. First of all, this guy is clearly suspicious. The Krill have already said this guy blew up like 3 or 4 of their ships. Seth asks him about it and he says he didn't do it. And then that's it. He's free to just roam the Orville and, steal their fucking weapons. The way they format it is also completely backwards. Like, we have a scene where Tala is asked if she trusts the guy and she says she doesn't. But I don't think we've seen these characters interact at all to justify this. And then the following scene is her finding him acting sus. Like, hey, editing room, why not just, flip the scenes around? You Dumbo or something? Too busy stealing ideas from Futurama to notice? And then, when Seth confronts Steve Smith about his friend, Steve starts going on about how Seth is just way jealous that they're better friends. And I was just scratching my head because not only do we barely see Steve Smith have any sort of positive interaction with this guy, but also, we almost never see him doing anything friend-like with Seth MacFarlane either. Again, this entire series we're just being told that they're best friends, but we barely see them interact, leaving this whole argument feeling like it comes out of nowhere. Even worse by the end of it when they find out this guy was on a suicide mission the whole time trying to blow up the Krill ship. And then Seth, for some reason, comes out with this.
I may have felt a little threatened by your friendship with Oren.
What? Why do you play me for a fool, Orville? Worst episode of the season, one of the worst of the series, actually. Awful. Thankfully for me, the best episode came just after. Written by Seth MacFarlane himself, no less. It's gotta be good, its opening shot has Minecraft for the Xbox 360. Now this episode, Lasting Impressions, is just a slam dunk from all cylinders. It's a brilliant idea. With Steve Smith getting so attached to this girl whose phone he found in an old 2015 time capsule that he starts using her history to simulate her life and get to know her. And he makes a solid argument to the rest of the crew when they come at him for this. They all treat Isaac as if he's real, so why can't they do the same for his simulated girlfriend? It's one of the only times in the entire show where I actually bought into the discussion they were having. I'll leave it there because if there was any episode of the Orville I'd encourage you watch, it's this one. Season 2, Episode 11. Go for it. Just finish the video first, please. Like and subscribe. I'll kill myself if you don't. Overall, though, the second season of the Orville was a massive improvement on the first. I was actually incredibly surprised. I didn't think you had it in you, Seth. And while not every episode is amazing or anything, there is some quality television in here. Color me impressed. You know, you can copy the set design, premise, themes of Star Trek all you want, but without substance you got nothing. And so I'm happy to see the Orville show its strengths as a genuine contender. I'm sure there were many Star Trek fans content with watching this over Star Trek Rick and Morty rejects. Dark Horse also started releasing an Orville comic book series around the midpoint of Season 2. Didn't get the chance to read it, but from looking at the cover, yeah, I think I can take a guess where the inspiration came from. Damn, another 100%. That's gotta be a good sign going in. I mean, could it be possible this is better than the already great Season 2? No. You ever binge watch a show and find yourself getting to a new season and something just feels off? Like something is shifted off screen and now you gotta look up what happened? That was the vibe I immediately got from the Orville Season 3, otherwise known as The Orville New Horizons. Except not really, it's following up on the plot points from the last 2 seasons still. It was bizarre though, there was actual thought put into the way scenes are lit. It was unnerving. So Season 3 of The Orville came very late. Season 2 finishing in April 2019 and not returning until over 3 years had passed. This was more than likely a result of Disney's acquisition of Fox. I assume it took a while to sift through all their shows and consider what was worth renewing and where they would find the funds for it. And so eventually the Orville returned, this time coming to Hulu instead of Fox. Also, I am 99% sure they changed the name to get around that weird thing where you have to pay more to actors and crew once your show gets a certain amount of episodes. But all you gotta do is change the fucking name to get around it. Sweet life on deck syndrome. Seems like the people who suffered the most from this merger were the cast, who were now stuck in limbo with whether or not the show would even continue at all, never mind when. The actress for Kelly in particular spoke out about this, discussing how certain cast members were struggling to pay for their apartments and had to turn down other roles due to the uncertainty around the Orville's continuation. Also citing Seth's want to be involved in every stage of the process, yet at the same time, being too busy to write and approve scripts in a timely manner.
It would just take so much time. And at one point we were like, we have to fight the studio to give us a holding fee or something, because, Jay Lee was eating saltines and Gatorade at one point because we just couldn't afford anything. It was horrible.
Wow.
Anyways, that doesn't affect the actual episodes themselves, so let's get into the Orville New Horizons, or as I like to call it, the Orville Massive Fucking Letdown. Not to say it's downright bad or anything, but the amount of good stuff in here definitely peels in comparison to last season. And for me personally, a lot of this can be boiled down to one simple thing: runtimes. Initially, I was shocked to see that Season 3 was the shortest season of the Orville yet, at only 10 measly episodes. Huh. Guess their budget got cut shorter than the previous seasons. No. In actuality, the Orville Season 3 is a whopping 75 minutes longer than Season 2, and that's because of one thing: the advantages that come with making a show for streaming versus for television. With TV, you gotta consider the block you're in, make sure there's room for a few ad breaks. There's a clear way to format your show. However, now that streaming's allowed folks to watch whatever the hell they want, whenever the hell they want, it means there's also less restrictions on every episode conforming to that standard 45-minute runtime. Sounds perfect! Allows the writers to truly get their ideas across in a way that doesn't restrict their vision. If one episode warrants a bit more time, then so be it, right? Most episodes of the Orville Season 3 are an hour and 20 minutes long. That is almost double the runtime. It's one of those cases where the restrictions were doing us a favor, because not only do some of these episodes drag out, only reaching the halfway point at a time when other seasons' episodes would have ended, but it also means we get less unique concepts. They could have taken that 70 extra minutes and given us 2 other episodes exploring another facet of the universe. Although, I suppose I wouldn't be as pressed if this season felt like it was doing anything new. Despite the different name, the Orville Season 3 decides to continue expanding on plot points from the second, which already was expanding upon plot points from the first. It's filled with sequel episodes, and sequel episodes to sequel episodes, and it just leaves the whole thing lacking any sort of real identity. Now, credit where credit's due, it looks fantastic. They've pretty much resolved every issue I've had with the way the show was shot before. There's actual consideration for the lighting, the CGI isn't as poor during action scenes. There's clearly an effort here to have the visuals convey the emotion of a scene without saying a word. But that just doesn't help when what I'm seeing has me bored to tears. There are a lot of great concepts brought completely down by the fact that these episodes are oftentimes twice as long as they need to be. The premiere, for example, love it! Isaac is being mistreated by the rest of the crew, as they're naturally cautious of him after his betrayal. We learn that a lot of the crew are also unhappy with Seth MacFarlane for reinstating him. Particularly this new character, Charlie, who I think they did a really good job at developing throughout the season. Especially for a character just plopped in from thin air. That usually spells disaster for a show. Looking at you, 13 Reasons Why. Should make a video about that sometime. I fucking love and hate that show. It's a really solid premiere where Isaac decides to kill himself after realizing the ship would be more efficient without him on it. And the crew has to now find a way to turn him back on. But no matter how good it is, this episode could have been as good as Seth MacFarlane's hair transplant. But it does not need to be an hour and 15 minutes. It results in so many stretched out scenes. This episode did not need extended practice sequences of Steve Smith testing the ship's new defense features. A scene that goes on for like 10 minutes, just for the sake of expositing one piece of info that comes back later. You could have easily shaved a solid 30 minutes off this episode, and that applies for every episode of the season. Again, I don't think I'd mind as much if it weren't for all the retreads. There's actually some interesting ideas in the standalone episodes. Like one where the crew find themselves being put in a series of deadly situations after arriving on this unknown planet. Before the end reveals this was all a simulation Jade from Victorious put them through, along with the reveal that this is the planet that worshipped Callie as a god in Season 1. They've since become immortal and want to know what death is like, and so put them through these simulations to find out. That is a super fun idea, but it does not need to be this fucking long. And that goes doubly so for the longest episode of the series at 90 fucking minutes. I've come to like Bortus during my time watching the Orville, even if he is just the most blatant Worf clone imaginable, but by God, he and his family get more episodes revolving around them in the show than Seth MacFarlane himself. I think this one gives Seth the least things to do, if anything. He really is just the weakest aspect of this show, but anyways, Bortus is a fun character, especially when we see him play the fish out of water to earth stuff. Like in my favorite episode last season, I didn't even mention this, but Bortus has this hilarious subplot where he and his husband get really into smoking and have to try quit it.
We must have more.
500 cigarettes.
But they cannot figure out a single thing to do with him that does not involve their husband or their fucking kid. He and his husband are miserable together, that is their gimmick. Sometimes they like to play up his husband being overly affectionate to him, and that is the only time I genuinely enjoy seeing them together. Any other time, they can fuck off. Which Collider does this season, for like 6 episodes. We get 2 episodes about Bortus' kid this time around, who has aged like 15 years in the span of 3 seasons. I don't know what the timeline for this show looks like, but part of me thinks I don't want to know. But they finally find out they were a girl this whole time and want to reverse the surgery done to them as a kid, leading to Collider leaving and telling their kid that they fucking hate them. And then a few episodes later, we see them visit the Mocklin Haven consisting of only women we find out existed last season, where just like... Okay, a lot of stuff happens. It's, again, 90-minute episode. Nothing I really want to get into. Go watch it for yourself. Or don't, like I said, an hour and a half. All that's important is that it results in the Mocklin leaving the Union and teaming up with the Krill to take on the Kaylon. This builds up to the only arc of the season that I felt paid off well, and that's everything to do with the Kaylon. I really loved the episode where an alien planet found a way to rewire a stray Kaylon, mass-producing and selling them to families as servants. Not only do we see history repeat itself with the Kaylon being treated as slaves and turning against them, but we also learn that they figured out a way to make the Kaylon capable of feeling real emotions, something Dr. Finn obviously wants to give Isaac. It results in one of my favorite moments of the series where Isaac is capable of expressing his love for the Doctor, and how awful he feels for not being able to reciprocate that love before. And then a glitch happens that reverts him back to his old personality, or lack thereof, I guess. It's truly bittersweet. Episode's still too long. I love where it leads to, though. The Krill and Mocklin getting possession of a device that could wipe out the Kaylon. And so to make sure things don't result in a genocide, Seth proposes a temporary team-up between the Kaylon and the Union to take them down together. And with that, the Kaylon, the greatest threat of the series, are now made allies and join the Union. All building up to the finale, which sees Dr. Finn and Isaac actually get married in a really sweet finale. Didn't need them to bring in the girl from the TED series as a new permanent member of the Orville, but it didn't sour things, thankfully. I mean, it ends with Steve Smith singing, that's all I could ever want. Worst episode of the season? Well, the lows definitely aren't as low as the first one, but I definitely have to say either the episode where Dr. Finn's ex-husband turns into a monster and it spreads throughout the ship, or the one where Seth finds out he has a half-Krill, half-human kid with the lady who was pretending to date him last season. We know nothing about Seth as a character, never mind that a kid is apparently something he ever wanted, and so there's not as much emotional weight to this as I think they were hoping for. Best, though, easily has to be the sequel episode to my favorite from last season, where some time travel fuckery leads to Steve Smith getting stuck in 2015, the crew mistakenly going to 2025 to get him, and find out he's sought out and married Laura, the girl whose phone he found. They're married and have a kid and he does not want to go back. It's got a very sad ending, one I wish wasn't so easily fixed. But either way, another fantastic episode. Still too long though, and that's the Orville. Wouldn't exactly say I'm a fan, and it's not even that I necessarily disliked it, but at its best, the Orville does an adequate job at replicating the success of a much better show, and at worst, it's just pure filler. Something for Star Trek fans to watch when there's no new season. Or no new season worth watching at the very least. I can commend Seth's efforts here, and how proud he must feel of this show. And the fact that it's built up a pretty sizable fanbase who genuinely like it in spite of its comparisons to Star Trek is not something to overlook. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot to like here, but for me, I think I'd rather just watch Star Trek. If anything, I'm hoping the next season, which will probably come out in 2027, Jesus Christ, shows a bit more willingness to branch out from the same 2 to 3 storylines they've been doing for the past 8 years. Shorten the episodes a tad, allowing for more opportunities to tell crazy stories that can only come from the quirky, twisted mind of Seth MacFarlane. But with that, I've officially watched and reviewed every single thing Seth has ever created. Well, except for Seth MacFarlane's cavalcade of cartoon comedy. Oh no, do I have to do that?